Public Enemy number one. When Public Enemy came on the scene, nobody wanted to sign them. And I'm gonna be honest with you, because they raps were political, and nobody was thinking about getting involved with Public Enemy and Chuck D and all that stuff. Security of the first world. Here it is, bam! And you say, yeah, damn, this is a dope jam. Well, let's define the term of dope. P.E. Public Enema. Oh man, Public Enemy number one. With the F1Ws. The security of the first world. When they hit, this was before the red, black, and green movement that kept going on, where the Chinese made like millions of dollars off all us buying all this red, black, and green Africa medallions that they kept making. They were like, look, we finna profit off this. None of that money was going to Africa. Chinaman was making those medallions for y'all. And it was Go Back to Africa movement in the early 90s. But before that, they created that buzz. Public Enemy were the only guys taking the stance that they were taking. Besides KRS-One, they were the most prolific teachers and educators when it came to what was going on in the world and outside of the world. They were telling you some real, like what's really going on, not just what's happening on the block. Now, when they first started off, like getting signed, that was going to be the hardest part for them, because here these guys from Long Island coming around here talking about they Public Enemy, and they had what, Check Out the Radio, and they weren't really together, like everybody else was. And by them not really being together, like it just wasn't flowing well. And then I think Rick Rubin had heard Public Enemy number one. And Rick Rubin was like, like, that's it. That's tight. I like, this could work. Like, Rick Rubin was behind it 100%. And then Rush Promotions and everybody else would go to the radio station, WBAU. And that's how, they ended up being signed. Now, this was a problem because they never wanted to sign Flavor Flav as a rapper. And it was just Chuck D. That's who they really wanted. And Chuck was like, no, we in this together. And Hank and Keith, the brothers came in with Eric Sadler, and they was like, look, the bomb squad, the protection team, and sorry about that, the burp. And Terminator X, who was the local DJ in the area, they came in and started to make some noise. And they had a rapper named Professor Griff, who was mostly, they called him the Minister of Information, because he had all this knowledge about like the history of the world and all this stuff. So he's like the spiritual advisor of Public Enemy. So the fact is, you never really heard Professor Griff on a lot of stuff, except for like the intro. He wasn't rapping, he was basically talking. I mean, talking and not rapping. So with this being said, Flavor Flav, the guy who they had to convince, they was just like, this guy here, I don't know, but he fit. He fit Public Enemy. Because once they met Flav, they loved him, but they like, man, this dude got so much personality, but him as a rapper, it's just like, are you kidding me? And they had to convince, like, dude, you're going to have to sign Public Enemy as a group. We got to be signed, all of us. So Russell is not too happy about it, but this is like Rick Rubin's. Like, this is his deal. Because he looked at Public Enemy like a rock band. Like, this is like a rap rock band, that you know, and he loved the music, the sound, the production, everything. So, Bum Rush the Show come out, and it doesn't really perform well. It turns some heads, and then people like, oh, okay, that's some local stuff, it's cool. They say, oh, well, PE's gonna fizzle out. That's not gonna last. That was good. It's a good listen to album, but that's it. And when it was released, people were like, I like this music, but other people in rap had to get used to it. Meaning that hip-hop fans wasn't really, you know, it was a new sound, new everything to them. So they heard of Public Enemy, but like I said, it just came and it went. Then came the second album. It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. Which, Bring the Noise, for the hip-hop artists, that was our song there, Bring the Noise. When we heard Bring the Noise, we was, yeah, this is it. But Don't Believe the Hype became the crossover massive hit that no one ever expected. Don't Believe the Hype. It was Don't Believe the Hype t-shirts, Don't Believe the Hype buttons, because everybody used to wear buttons back in the day. I don't know if y'all remember that. This is the button phase. Everybody had buttons, big gigantic, Don't Believe the Hype, and you had to have buttons that matched the shirt. You know, like Don't Believe the Hype shirt got to have a Don't Believe the Hype button. So it was like buttons everywhere. Don't Believe the Hype. And it became a radio smash song. Don't Believe the Hype. It was High Spins and Alert. And people had no idea what Public Enemy record was. People just was like, go buy that record. It Takes a Nation of Millions to hold it. Got Don't Believe the Hype on there. And they had no idea what they was purchasing. Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos. The lyrics on these songs. You know, and people were like, oh my gosh, once they really got into it. And then it brought up something that happened in London where they did a radio interview after Bum Rush the Show. They was promoting that and working on the second album. And some remarks were brought up about, see, there was no social media again, so you were able to do interviews and stuff went past people's ears. But these writers and reporters, Jewish, didn't like what they said. They homoic, you know, homophobic or whatever. They talked about gays and how they should all die and Sodom and Gomorrah was. So when they were talking that, I had put up some red flags over in London. Well, I picked some of the writers who were offended. Now it became, since there's such a big, massive hit, this has become a massive problem because now they're in the public eye. They're like in stardom range. So now you got to be a little more careful and delicate how you deal with Public Enemy. But it was about to hit the fan because people were listening to the music that offended a lot of people. And then a reporter put out a message saying, and I think it was in Spin, where they talked to Chuck D, and he was talking about he back up Professor Griff's statements. And that's when people were like, whoa, what statements are they talking about? And they went back to the article where Professor Griff, who's the Minister of Information, and they called him the Black Muslims. They don't trust Professor Griff, and because he's just wild with it, and he blames Jews for everything. And Chuck D, you know, when he said, Professor Griff said there's no place for gays. And he's like, if the Palestinians took up arms and went into Israel and killed all the Jews, it would be all right. And Chuck D just said, look, people are going to say that Griff said this and said that, and I said something else entirely different. He's like, that's what they're going to do. So his thing is just put it out there like, look, I back Griff. Whatever he says, he can prove. And that was it. Now, this became a major problem going into the next couple of albums. Because what happened is they had the black reporter, David Mills. Everybody remember the David Mills incident, in which they're going to have Professor Griff and David Mills do a one-on-one interview with the Washington Times. This is a setup from day one. All they wanted to do was to humiliate and try to disgrace Public Enemy and most likely Professor Griff, and just have him expose himself on a public display to put fear in the Jews that's needed to back them, to say, look at what they are. This is what Public Enemy are. They're anti-Semitic, and we're supporting them. And Mills, because he was black, they used him. And here we go. They do the interview, right? And then he was like, what was he saying? I think that's why they call it Jewry, because of Jews. And he's like, ain't that what it said? I'm trying to think, what did he say? That Professor Griff just exploded. Professor Griff, I just want to be exact. He said the Jews are responsible for the wickedness that goes on the globe. And he challenged them to bring their faggot hitman after him. And how the Jewish people and he said, what did he say? The Jewish people experimented, though they financed the experiments on AIDS with black people in South America. And that the Jews had their hands around Bush's throat. Well, once he said that about Bush, now you put the entire spectrum of the federal government and Public Enemy under the bus. And they working on Fear of a Black Planet. Fight the Power is already out. You know, it's burning up the charts. And with this movement they had with Fight the Power, now Public Enemy talking about South America and what's going on over there, now they consider it to be a front. And they had to attack Public Enemy from a different angle. You know, CBS and the people that had a stake in the company wanted to come after Chuck D and put pressure on Chuck D to do something about Professor Griff. So if he didn't do it, they were going to tear down Chuck D. And see, by the time they had another thing right now, Griff was no longer going to be Public Enemy's Minister of Information, which meant that he was going to take a lesser role in the group. And that's not what they wanted. They wanted Professor Griff gone. And with Griff gone out of the group, he felt Chuck D sold out and sold him out. So it became a big melee of ego clashing anyway. He did an interview in which he kind of spoke on how some of the brothers had fallen victim to fame, and the fact that Chuck D was trying to get out of Public Enemy altogether and do his own thing, because Flav and Chuck wasn't getting along, and there was a lot of infighting with other people who were like advisors and managers. So when they did the album in 91, Apocalypse 91, that The Enemy Strikes Back, that was it. Chuck was already had his record label. He wanted to put out artists and put out the music he wanted to put out. So he had his deal with MCA. So he was like, this is it. After this, we are done. There's no more Public Enemy. And, you know, and at the time it had grown its course with everybody. And basically because of ego. Professor Griff was riffing at the fact that he wanted to do more songs and be a rapper and be on the songs doing all this stuff, and Chuck felt like that's not the direction that they wanted to take, because it was not what they agreed about. He was the Minister of Information. He was going to be behind the scenes, but he wanted to be more and more vocal or seen in a military type of setting, but him rapping and talking about making songs going after the government. And he felt that Chuck and them were kind of holding him back for a reason, because other people was in their ear. Flavor Flav, who they didn't want to have a deal in the first place, Flav wanted to do more things. Flav wanted to have more songs and do this and that, and he was with it at times, and some of the stuff, you know, Flav had his own problems with his personal problems he was going through. And then it wasn't everything going on with the brothers, Shock and all of them, the Bomb Squad. You know, things just, it was time to do something new. Then maybe years down the road, Public Enemy could come back together. That's the way they wanted to do it. But that time had came and gone, because when they left, you had X-Clan, you had all these groups come out, and it was trendy to be talking about Africa, South Africa, and Public Enemy was no more, and they just had to get all those managers and people who had hands in their pockets, who was trying to cut other people out to position themselves. They just had to clear all those people out, because there was so many involved. And this is what happens when you have like big groups. You know, things like this happen all the time. So that's what happened. But other than that, That's it. I mean, that's how the group broke up. Professor Griff put out that horrible album with the song Pawns in the Game, where he's doing martial arts in the video. And it's probably on YouTube. I'm gonna go watch that. We all pawns to the game. Y'all we do the game. Yeah, so I remember back, like, they put it on Yo TV Raps, like, it's a new banger by Professor Griff. It's like, Professor Griff? What is he doing with a song? And there it was. Nobody latched to that song. Nobody latched to the video. It was so out of place. And this is before the mystery of chess boxing. He was on a chessboard doing karate kicks and stuff. I mean, I cannot make this up. But I'm out.